Funding for This Is Nashville comes from Burr and Foreman Law Firm, serving clients with transactional, litigation, and regulatory needs. Discovering how each client defines a win and working with them every step of the way to achieve it. Burr.com.
I'm Khalil Kulona, and this is Nashville. Welcome to another Your Turn to Talk Thursday. Today, we're talking about near-death experiences, or NDEs. Now, many of us have had near-death experiences where we may have been at risk or could have died and rightly have been impacted by what happened. NDEs, however, are really specific experiences reported by people who are close to death or who have clinically died and been resuscitated. Often these people report an out-of-body experience and say that they've encountered a different reality. Now, NDEs, can be positive experience. They can be neutral, negative, or a mixed experience. Researchers, including psychologists, neurologists, cardiologists, and oncologists, have been studying near-death experiences and the impact of these on individuals for over 50 years. Now, there's a lot that we don't know about, and there's no consensus about what these experiences are or what they even mean. But there's a significant documented evidence that people of all ages, backgrounds, and walks of life have reported them and continue to. I am one such person. Now, today, we're not really looking to find any specific answers, but to explore this topic together, keeping in mind that death is a difficult experience to talk about and encounter for many of us. So we're going to meet this topic of NDEs and any conversation about death with an open curiosity and compassion for ourselves and, most importantly, others. And we want to hear from you. How do you feel when you hear about NDEs? Are you comfortable or uncomfortable speaking about death? Have you ever had an NDE or close call with death that changed you? You can give us a call if you'd like to share. We'd really love to hear from you. Give us a call at 615-760-2000. That's 615-760-2000. All right, now to get us started, This Is Nashville producer Katherine Ceicys spoke with Dr. Marietta Filiavona. She is a scientific researcher who studies NDEs and the Division of Perceptual Studies in the Department of Psychiatry and Neurobehavior Sciences at the University of Virginia School of Medicine. Let's take a listen.
Marietta, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you for having me.
So you study near-death experiences. As far as I understand, there's no one specific definition of an NDE, but can you just tell us what are near-death experiences?
Yes, there's currently no clinical definition. But in general, these experiences are understood to be subjective, personal, highly transformative experiences that can happen when someone is close to death, including being clinically dead and subsequently resuscitated, or even in some other medical crisis. So every near-death experience is idiosyncratic to the individual who is having it. But there are certain elements or features that researchers have been able to identify from studying thousands of these experiences. So one of the most common features is people experiencing themselves outside of their physical body and maybe even observing their body from a vantage point outside of it. People also often report feelings of peace and joy and unconditional love. Although I should say some experiences are also reported as distressing. There's also a very almost like a hyper-real vividness of senses. There may be encounters with various mystical beings, mystical entities, or deceased loved ones. And another very interesting feature is what we call a panoramic life review. So the person might experience significant events from their life, going back to the beginning of their life and experiencing them not just from their perspective, but also from the perspective of other people, including potentially experiencing the emotions of these other people and how they were affected by the given event. And one of the most common changes that we see is that people may lose their fear of death almost instantaneously and become convinced that there is life after death.
Do we know how common NDEs are?
Yes. So there's no precise answer because it depends on the study. But if you look at critically ill patients. Some studies say that about 17% of people will report a near-death experience. If you look specifically at cardiac arrest, between 18 and 23% of cardiac arrest patients will report a near-death experience. These experiences are not rare, and they reliably happen in certain kinds of medical situations or settings, including cardiac arrest.
Can you share how you got interested in NDEs and what your research is focused on right now?
I would say over time, just delving into this topic, it just became so fascinating to me because people share these stories of powerful transformation. I've become very interested in doing research on how to help them and support them, because even if the content of the ND is very positive, and again, unconditional love, peace, joy, this overwhelming sense of being home, when these people come back, they can still struggle and just not know how to integrate this experience into their prior lives and prior perceptions of who they are. So I want to look at things like, how do we support these people? What do they need? How do we educate medical professionals about this experience? Because they're the ones who are likely to encounter these experiencers right after they have an NDE.
What do you hope someone will take away about NDEs in general?
I really hope that people can become more accepting, even if you yourself have not had a near-death experience, which most people don't. I think it's important to recognize that these experiences are very real and impactful for the people who have them. I just think it's important to just recognize we don't know everything, we haven't been exposed to everything, but we need to be respectful of other people's experiences. Especially something that has been documented for decades, and thousands, millions of people have reported this experience.
All right, that was Dr. Mariella Pelavanova talking with This Is Nashville producer Katherine Ceicys. And Marietta, if you're listening, I really apologize for butchering your name the first time around, but that's why we try and get better. Okay, so we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you. How do you feel about NDEs? Are you comfortable or uncomfortable speaking about death? Did you experience an NDE or have a close call with death that changed you? Give us a call if you'd like to share. Again, we really want to hear from you. 615-760-2000, 615-760-2000. Joining us now to share about her perspective on NDEs from her experience caring for those who are going through the dying process is Wilka Roig. She's a transpersonal psychologist and an end-of-life doula and educator with the International End-of-Life Doula Association. Wilka is based in Mexico, but she's joining us now from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Wilka, thank you so much for being here with us. Welcome to This Is Nashville.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Really appreciate you being here. You know, we got a lot to talk about today, but I really want to start, getting to know what an end-of-life doula is. Can you tell us what end-of-life doulas are and how you serve people who are approaching the dying process?
Sure. End-of-life doulas are a non-medical professional role in the space of the dying and the grieving. And this movement came about since it's been sort of evolving since Elizabeth Kubler-Ross started talking about we need to listen to the patients and to the people who are dying and not just assume that we have the knowledge and that it's a medical event only. It is also it is more importantly a human event and a natural event. And so we started to see that there were gaps in the care for dying people, and this role emerged as a companion, an advocate, someone who is there to hold the space and to honor the autonomy of the person in their dying process, their choices, their feelings, whatever is coming up for them that they need to address so that they can more easily leave this life. And so a doula nowadays works individually or in a collective or in a volunteer group and complements all of the other teams that are supporting a dying person. sometimes within hospice or in hospitals or at home. And there's a whole spectrum of things that we can do for a dying person and their circle of care. So we invite the conversations, we create safe spaces for exploration and for getting the person to really know what they're thinking, how they're feeling, and what their wishes are. Because when somebody is with a terminal diagnosis or in the dying process, there's a lot that is being told to them about what they need to do, what they can't do. And so this is a space for them to really connect with and reclaim their own process.
You know, the folks that you care for are pretty vulnerable spaces, as you said. You know, they can painful, difficult moments in their lives. You have to have a dedicated intention in being present for someone else who's dying. What do you hope in your work? What do you hope to offer and bring people that you care for?
Well, exactly what you're saying. Presence is the most important thing. So we come in with a compassionate, loving, non-judgmental presence. So a big part of what doulas have to do is work on their self-awareness and responsibility to hold the space for them so that it's not about us. And then just be a presence that receives and that witnesses the process, that listens, that reflects back, that asks the open-ended questions that will just encourage the exploration for the dying person and their circle of care. We come in without expectations, without an agenda, just to allow for the process to unfold.
We have a call from Stefan in Gallatin. Stefan, thank you so much for giving us a call, my friend. What would you like to share?
I'm a Christian, Pentecostal in my faith. Believe in the indwelling Spirit of God. The Lord filled me with the Spirit of God when I was 18, and I kind of kept doubting, kind of fearful. One night while I was praying, I prayed that prayer, Lord, I want to feel your presence again. I want to be able to know I got your Spirit. So when I went to sleep, my spirit came out of my body. I remember I can see me laying on my bed, but I was at the ceiling and I could feel the ceiling. It was kind of not weird, but different from a human, experience. And his voice told me, it ain't that I didn't feel you with my spirit. You doubted me. And as soon as he said that, I went back into my body. And I remember getting up screaming, and my brother, Cherry, was in the other room. He came out and said, man, what's wrong with you? And I told him, and just from that experience, I know the other life is real, the afterlife. But I actually know there is out-of-body experience. That's my experience.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Because sometimes we may have experiences that mirror some aspect of NDEs when they're even apparently not close to death. Is that something that you just heard from Stefan?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see. What I've observed is that, any person at any moment in their life can have a moment like was just shared, where there is an opportunity to connect with something greater. And that shows up for people in the way that has meaning to them. And that, as the doctor, the researcher that spoke earlier, it brings us back with a greater sense of confidence and joy and connection with unconditional love and all of these things. And what I have observed with dying people is that often there are those moments when they are leaving their bodies and then coming back before they actually go through the transition of death. So this is something that from my standpoint, can happen at any point. And as long as the body is still viable and can still sustain life, then there can be that return with a greater awareness or with something that allows them to move forward.
Stefan, let me ask you this. After your experience, immediately after in the years since, because this happened when you were a young man, from what I understand, did you feel a bit different? Did you feel like you had a new sense of purpose? Like you became clear on what you were to do with your life in your remaining days here on earth?
Yes, sir. I've always stayed faithful to God after that. And it's just the reality to know he exists, and it's not fairy tale or the Bible's a myth. It's a real situation with me, and I've been able to share those things with other people to help them and guide them in their life of there is an afterlife. So.
Wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to call us up, and really, really grateful that you shared your experience with us, my friend. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good day, my man. Now, Wilka, from what I understand, when you were quite young, you had an experience where you were close to death. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us about that?
Yes, this is not something I speak very openly about, but because this is the topic today, absolutely, it definitely marked my life. I was 4 years old when this happened. And it was, much as Stefan described, this very, very real experience that feels human and not human at the same time, of leaving the body and observing what the scene. And then in my experience, I went somewhere else, and I could never explain what that is. It's as the researcher spoke earlier, it's a sense of love and home and being accompanied, or being with other presences. And what inspired me to come back, I had a respiratory failure, was my mother. Yeah. So, and because it was something that was possible to return to a body that could continue on, then that's what happened.
Was that experience something that led you to find your way into the work that you're doing now?
I would say so today. Back then I was so young. It's a little bit difficult to say. At that time, it wasn't so much that I understood that I had a purpose, but I understood that I was coming back with a different sense. That led me to a very young spiritual crisis at age 5. And that has led me on this journey that brings me here today. Yeah. So I think it did mean something, but it wasn't something that I could integrate for many, many years.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Colonna. Today, we're talking about near-death experiences. My guest is Wilka Roig. She's an end-of-life doula and educator at the International End-of-Life Doula Association. And have you ever been through an NDE, which is known as a near-death experience? Give us a call and let us know what your experience was, just like Stefan did. 615-760-2000. That's 615-760-2000. Now, Wilka, I had an experience once. 2012, I had appendicitis that kind of went haywire. I was in the hospital for nearly 2 weeks, and I've never had any serious medical issues before in my life. Until that point, the most I've had done to me were 6 stitches in my eyebrow in college between parties, to give you a frame of reference, right? I have this appendicitis. I'm in the emergency room. I go under. And as they're telling me to count down, as they're applying the anesthetic, I had to ask myself, I said, Khalil, you may not wake up again. If you don't, do you feel satisfied with the life that you have lived up to this point? And my answer could only be yes. Then the next thing I remember, but before they wake me up, it's not a white room, but it's a white expanse. And there's an old wooden chair. And on top of that chair is a Fisher-Price record player connected to a speaker. And next to that is a stack of vinyl records. I was listening to them. They were Spanish language covers of old Motown hits, some of the most beautiful music I had ever heard. Then I'm woken up by the doctor, the attending physicians, everyone, the nurses. They're making sure that I'm okay. Sir, are you all right? I begged them to send me back because I was having a blast listening to these records, and I wanted to get through the entire pile. Come on to later to find that they weren't able to take my appendix out because I was so septic. And when they finally cleaned me up and went to remove my appendix, my blood pressure dropped. And they said, sir, we almost lost you. We had to make these things. And it was interesting because, again, a very serious incident happened to me in 2012. And as I'm recovering, I begin to hear from friends who had near-death experiences. And they talk about the different perspective on life that you're given afterward. That is something that that happened to me. My perspective changed on life. Things that I thought were important were no longer important. Certain goals that I thought I had fizzled off to the wayside. Dare I say, my broadcasting career started about a year after this incident. So it's like a new life and a new path was set forth from me. From what you understand about NDEs and people who have come out on the other side of those, is that something that's common? Do people find new things, new directions, new way to live their life and experience this thing we call life?
Yes, absolutely. As you mentioned, there's a very marked shift in perspective about what's meaningful, what's important, and why we are here, right? There's a, we're still human, we're still going to struggle, we're still going to be uncomfortable, but there is something else that gives us that, I don't know, momentum or motivation to trust that there's something else that we're here to do. Yeah, I think in all of the cases, and even when in some cases it's in the middle of the life, so that people continue living and it's been a while since that's happened. But in the case of people who are nearing death, even when it happens within 6 months of their actual dying process, or 9 months is the one, I think the longest one that I experienced or witnessed. It gives people a very powerful sense of what to do with that time that they have left. They understand that this is an opportunity to address certain things while they still can. And so, of course, the priorities are going to shift and the choices they make are going to be different. The value on things, as you mentioned.
One of the most common points of conversation as I was recovering, learning this from friends, was that they all said they wish other people could have this renewed sense and view on life without having to go through the trauma of a near-death experience. But let me ask you this. How did you find your current line of work? How did you come into this field?
Well, I was in my psychology practice, and there were two things that happened that really marked the direction of my work. One was that most of everybody who was coming into my consult office were people who were survivors of loss by suicide. And so on the one hand, we were working with deep grief and a lot of questioning of life and a lot of life review, because there's a way in which our losses also are a near-death experience. And so I observed that, but then I started to hear from them how their deceased loved ones were, according to them, intervening in their lives to guide them and to give them a sense of purpose again. And so that was happening on the one hand. And I started to understand that any person who comes into an office of, for therapeutic support or these kinds of things, in a way, we're all dealing with unattended grief. So I started to think, okay, so what we're dealing with here is always about some kind of unattended grief. And I don't want to generalize, so it's not always, but there is always some of that in our human experience. That was one thing. But the other thing that really called my attention is that in 3 separate cases, very, unrelated occasions, I had 3 clients who came in with a very particular intention of, I really want to, get my life in order. I really want to have a clean slate. I really want to be able to really enjoy my life and work through all of the things that are getting in my way and all of these things. And in those 3 cases, they came in with a lot of dreams, and they were sharing their dreams, and somehow the dreams were guiding our therapeutic process. And then they all came to a point when they felt that they were complete. And these are the only 3 cases in my career where somebody comes in and says, actually, we did the work. This is great. And, when we start a contract with a client, we always ask for a termination session, right? Which is a session where you sit and recapitulate and look at where you came and how far you've come and the learnings and all of these things. And there is closure to the therapeutic relationship. These were the only 3 people who actually asked for a termination session. And so we did have that, where we were able to do sort of like a review of the work we had done and the advancement and growth and the evolution that they saw in themselves and their lives and how complete they felt. And they even brought me parting gifts, and it was a beautiful space. And in all 3 cases, within 5 days, they were dead. from, unexpected circumstances. And so the first time it happened, I was shocked for a minute. And then I was like, oh, but they were ready because they told me they felt great, like they had figured it out in their life. When the third time this happened, it really called my attention to want to know more about there is something that prepares us even when we are not expecting death to come. And so those two things led me to start to really include awareness of death in my day-to-day life and then in my day-to-day practice. And then finally, I started to be called into dying spaces because the public health care system where I live and work, they have to take people out of the system in order to attend to other patients, and they would call psychologists to attend to the dying person and their family. I think there's some issue there with the assumption that if somebody dies, it's a failure, so it must not be a medical issue, it must be a psychological issue. But I entered into those spaces realizing that this is a very different space. This is not a therapeutic space. This is not like a family therapy space. This is something else. And I felt that there was this natural instinct that was awakened in me of knowing how to be in those spaces. And so I became very curious and looked into, in Mexico, we still have thriving sort of original traditions and communities that are holding space for each other in their dying. And there are people who, as much as they tend to the birthing in their communities, also tend to their dying. And so I went there to sort of verify whether what I was doing or feeling or what was coming through me was along the lines of what we've been doing since the dawn of time. And then I started to think, oh, this is like death midwifery. So then I looked up and found INELDA, this was in 2015, as one of the first schools for training end-of-life doulas. And that's how I started on this path more officially.
All right. Thank you for that. We're going to take some calls, but first we're going to go to break. So Elvin and John, stay with us. We're going to get to your calls when we come back. And when we return, we'll continue the conversation about near-death experiences. And we want to hear from you. How do you feel about when you hear a near-death experience? Are you comfortable or uncomfortable speaking about death? Did you experience an NDE or have a close call with death that really changed you? Give us a call if you'd like to share, 615-760-2000. We'll be right back. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Ekulona, and this is Nashville. Today, we're talking about near-death experiences, or NDEs, which are often reported as out-of-body experiences by people who are physically close to death or who have clinically died and been resuscitated. Joining me is Wilka Roy. She's a transpersonal psychologist, an end-of-life doula, and educator at the International End-of-Life Doula Association based in Mexico. And how do you feel when you hear about NDEs? Are you comfortable or uncomfortable speaking about death? Did you have an NDE or a close call with death that changed you? Really, we want to hear from you. Give us a call, 615-760-2000, 615-760-2000. We're going to go to Elvin in Nashville. Elvin, thank you so much for giving us a call. What would you like to share, my friend?
Hi, thanks for having me. I was listening to the show and was just fascinated by some of the other stories and thought I'd share mine. My near-death experience happened when I was younger, young man. I was doing drugs and things like that, and I was in bed, after doing some of these, and the only thing I can think of is that I must have stopped breathing. And I say that because as I was laying there, I could see myself floating up, like one of the other people said, through to the ceiling and then through the ceiling, actually. And I could look down and see myself, and I wasn't panicking or anything. I was just going up. And as I kept getting higher and higher, I could see that I was sort of leaving the earth and kind of drifting out in space now. And I had the feeling, or I just knew in that moment that I could literally think of wherever I wanted to go, and I could have been there. I mean, I could, just like I knew the back of my hand, I knew that I could just, wherever I thought, that's where I could go if I wanted to. But right when I had that thought, I said, well, wait a minute, I still have, my kids and things I don't want to leave yet. And something told me, some presence or something told me that, hey, you can come back anytime. You don't have to go now. You can go anytime you want to. And I said, yeah, but this is really nice, and I don't want to miss out on it. And if this is the only time that I can go, then I'd rather go than come back. And they just assured me, like, no, really, if you want to go back, you can go. If you want to come, you can come. It's totally up to you. And then I thought about it. I said, well, I think I want to go back because I want to spend some more time with my children. And they said again, if you want to go, you can. It's fine. You can come back whenever you're ready. You can come back. And at that point, I looked back at my body and I realized, like, hey, I'm not breathing. And that at that point, it kind of scared me. And that's when I started to descend back into my body. And when I woke up, I literally had to, like pinch myself and to see, was I dreaming or did this happen? And I just kind of sat in bed and just was thinking about it, all night. And I don't know how much it changed my perspective on, the things that I do other than when I talk to people that, are near death, because I am a pastor now, I can talk to them with a sense now of saying that it's okay. It's all right. You don't have to be afraid of where you're going. And so I feel good about that and having that experience.
Elvin, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Wilka, is it common for people in your experience who have had NDEs to kind of move into kind of counseling roles, kind of like how Elvin did, how he pastors people who are near death and worked to make them comfortable?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, most of the experiences that I have witnessed are with people who end up, being very near death until they die. But the few that I know in person who have, continued to live a full life, they're fully transformed. And not only do they go into some kind of work of service or counseling or some way of sharing from their experience how to help others find their own path and healing and all of that. It definitely, it feels to me that we can bring some of that quality that we feel wherever that is back here and then share it in some way. Yeah.
Elvin, thank you so much for giving us a call, my friend. Really appreciate it. Okay, we're going to take a call from John in Springfield. John, thank you for waiting, my friend. What would you like to share?
All right. My name is John. Originally, I'm from East Nashville. I owned Autry Automotive. And when I was a kid, 12 years old, my grandfather had a farm. And on the farm, he raised cows, all that. But he had turkey houses, commercial turkey houses. And one of the Romex wires grounded out on a water feeder. And I touched the wires on it and got both hands on it. I was on the ground shaking, and I had electricity, 220, one leg of it, shocking me, and I couldn't let go. And I was shaking water on me. My cousin was right beside me. I was screaming. He ran to the house, probably 400, 500 feet away, got my grandfather and my uncle. I was probably on there 2 to 3 minutes. And as this was going on, my mind, I could feel the electricity pulsing through my body, the cycles. But as I was getting shocked, I had still pictures from the time I was born, it seemed like. When I was very little, it popped these pictures, picture, of different, from the time I was young to that age. It just kept flashing all these pictures. And beyond that, it felt like I was looking down at myself. And that was the experience I had. My uncle knocked me off of it, and it almost burnt my fingers to the bone. It wouldn't kick the breaker. But that was the experience that I had, but it was so real. I remember like it was yesterday. So, but that's what happened in my case, and luckily I survived. I think at that particular time my heart probably quit beating. I don't know. I was just getting electrocuted.
Mm-hmm.
So,
really appreciate.
It was a traumatic experience.
I appreciate you sharing that with us, John. Can I ask you, I know you were 12, you were young at that time, but did you think about life differently after that experience?
I don't really know. I mean, I was a Christian. I was saved. I was a ball player. I was, active in the community. We played baseball in East Nashville, and it was a great time growing up. But I ended up being a role as a business owner, and I think I was very liked in the community there. So I worked on people's cars for years, and it's a 50-year business. And I'm sure I got a lot of listeners that know me.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm retired now, so.
People know your face is in the control room lit up when you said your name and your business, so they know you.
Yeah.
We really, really appreciate you giving us a call, John. Really appreciate it. Thank you, my friend. Have a good day, okay?
Okay, I just want to say one more thing
yes,
to
sir.
My brother and sister-in-law, that I do listen to both sides of the aisle. Thank y'all.
They're happy to hear that. So am I, John. Have a beautiful one, my friend.
Okay.
All right. That is pretty cool. Now, we're going to go to another call. We have James in Murfreesboro. James has been waiting for a long time. James, what would you like to share with us, my friend?
Haven't been waiting too long, but I'm 61 years old. But when I was a boy of about 10 years old, my mother had been bedridden for just over a couple of years, I guess. But she never told us that her illness was terminal. I was number 7 of 8 kids, and I had no clue. I just knew she just couldn't get out of bed. But I was coming home from baseball practice one day, and just imagining in my mind if there's a house fire, how I'd rescue my mom and be a hero. But when I approached the house, I wasn't more than 10 feet away from the front porch, and just a deep, deep heaviness came over me like I'd never experienced before. It just was overwhelming. And then my father opened the front door to usher me in, and he suddenly told me that our mother had passed away. So, time passed, and when I was graduating from high school, I was working as a lifeguard in the summer, and my father prematurely just picked me up from work one day, and as he was getting out of the car, that deep heaviness came over me again, just deeper, and I remember that experience so vividly. And then again, he had to tell me that our eldest brother had been killed in an automobile accident earlier that day. And it's just a deep sense of knowing something had happened before it happened or before I was told.
James, do you mind if I ask you, when you think about these incidents that happened to you in life, earlier in life, and what is your relationship with death? How do you think about death?
It's just a part of life. Our lives, and nothing's promised in life. We just go through it and try to appreciate what we have and make the most of it. Be respectful of others, and learn from the life lessons that we've gained from people who have influenced our lives while they've been in it. So that's been a big effect in my life.
Wilka, do you have any questions for James? Wonderful. Well,
but I do remember vividly, though, when my father passed, I just had a deep voice in my soul. It just said, I was at the hospital. I hadn't slept all night long. I was there when he passed, and something just told me, it's like, your father's passed. You need to go home and get cleaned up and look your best, come back dressed up and looking good, because when people look at you to say, pay their respects, that when they look at you, that you're a reflection of your father. And that changed my life. Everything I do now, I'm 61 now, and I meet people that are in their 90s that were close friends with my parents, and they look at me and like, whoa, there's George, my father. And so I realized that there's a responsibility to live my life honorably, but be a good reflection of the lessons and the person that my parents were.
Really appreciate you calling, James. Really, thank you so much for this, my friend. Have a good day.
Right. Thank you. You too.
All right. We're going to take one more break, okay? When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation about near-death experiences. And again, we want to hear from you. These are some really just wonderful stories that are very deep, and hopefully all of us can learn from something. Give us a call, 615-760-2000, 615-760-2000. We'll be right back. I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. Welcome back. Today we're talking about near-death experiences and life and death in itself. Joining me now is Wilka Roig. She is a transpersonal psychologist and end-of-life doula and educator with the International End-of-Life Doula Association. Wilka, so glad to have you here. Thank you for being here for this show.
It's been wonderful so far. Thank you.
Okay, so we've had some really amazing calls from people talking about, near-death experiences earlier in life and how it's kind of influenced and changed them. Like, do you think that there are ways that we all can get more clarity or a purpose outside of having an encounter with death? Or is that one of the gifts that thinking about our mortality can give us a new sense of purpose?
Yes, absolutely. We definitely don't need to be close to death or get a terminal diagnosis or have a near-death experience to take advantage of this opportunity that we are living with, dying every day, that the smallest changes and to the biggest losses all give us an opportunity to connect with our nature, and that includes death, and to allow ourselves to contemplate the fact that we are mortal and what do we want to do with our lives and why are we here, and all of these things is part of that process. And so this show is wonderful because we've heard so many wonderful stories, and sometimes many people who have had these experiences don't dare to speak up about them, or they don't talk about their questions and their insights and everything else that comes with contemplating our mortality because, we think it's not allowed or it's a negative thing or a bad thing, but it really isn't. It is very life affirming, in fact, because when we get close to death, then we really truly understand the value of the fact that we are still alive. And so it shifts our purpose and our focus to becoming our highest potential, to, having meaningful lives and meaningful connections and leaving meaningful contributions for after we are gone.
We have some time left and we want to hear from you. So give us a call, 615-760-2000, and tell us about your experience. Now, I do want to ask this, how could we do better in our approach about the idea of death? As you said, it is so uncomfortable for so many people, but it's something that's going to happen to all of us. We're all born and we all are going to die one day. What can we do in our society or just in general as individuals and community to think differently about death, to embrace it and accept it as something that is a part of the cycle that we're all experiencing?
Well, I think there are many ways, and this movement of death awareness and the death doula movement and all these other things that are now emerging are some of the ways in which we can do something, to look at what is not working and how we can bring back humanity and dignity to our dying and grieving processes. And, it could be in a very big way within communities and more internationally, or it could be in a personal way and just do it with ourselves and those who are closest to us, to open up the conversations, to explore what we already know, because the truth of it is that we don't talk about these experiences, whatever they are, whether it's our fear of death or whether it's experiences we've had with losses, our grieving, all of these things. But when we do, we realize that we are not alone, and we discover that this is in fact part of our daily living. This is not something that is only saved for when there's a death that's near. So to be able to open up more, also questioning, how do we get here? As humans, as a species, we weren't always relating to our mortality the way we do today. And so what have been the conditioning factors that have led us to a place where we shy away from it or deny it or even become phobic of it? So in our nature is to want to be close to it, because there's some part of us that knows that this is part of what we walk with daily. So all of these ways of allowing ourselves to explore and connect with each other through our losses and our experiences with mortality also is what allows us to articulate and realize and bring to conscious awareness that life has already taught us a lot, and death has already taught us a lot about what this is for us.
Mm-hmm. All right, we got 5 minutes left. I got 3 calls. We're going to Jennifer in Columbia. Jennifer, please quickly share your story with us.
Hello, thank you. In 2009, I was living in St. Louis and collapsed from sudden cardiac arrest. And it was late at night. I had been with friends and family to a fundraiser there in St. Louis. And I was on the street. They called for an ambulance. And during the time that I had collapsed, they couldn't find a heartbeat. I was not breathing. They started CPR. And what I remember when I came back, that I was in a place that was very warm, even though it was in the middle of February and it was freezing cold. And I saw like the old Viewmaster slides. Mm-hmm. They were black and white, and it was like it was clicking like the Viewmaster, and I would see pictures of my daughters, my husband, loved ones, and then there would be a click, and there would be another black and white still. And then when I did come to, I felt very warm, I felt very safe, but was able to come back. And my husband was right over me while they were administering CPR, and his face was upside down. I remember that. But I heard the voices first before I actually came back and saw my family. Since then, I'm a counselor, and that was a second career for me. I'm 75 now, and I feel like God was there with me that night to provide a friend who was able to perform CPR and keep me going until I resuscitated. And since then, I just wanted to, use whatever time I have left that God has given to me to care for others. So I'm still counseling, and will continue to do so.
We're so glad that you are, Jennifer, and we're so happy that you called to share your story with us. Really appreciate it. Have a beautiful day, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so we only have a couple minutes left. So Stefan, Charlotte, and Elizabeth, thank you so much for giving us a call. We're not going to be able to get to your calls this episode. Hopefully we do another one like this very soon. But Wilka, I kind of want to end with a few things. What do you think NDEs can tell us or teach us on how to think about how we're currently living?
I think what they can teach us, or what I have learned from experience and from observation and what other people share, is that it would seem that we are part of something greater than ourselves, and that when we bring that back, it just shifts we've talked about it already, it brings us back to wanting to be of service, and in a way, or directly or indirectly, remind others of this knowledge that maybe we all have, but we're not all able to connect with.
Mm-hmm. Wilka Roig is a transpersonal psychologist and end-of-life doula and educator with the International End-of-Life Doula Association. Wilka, I really appreciate you being here for this show and really helping guide us through this wonderful conversation. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
And we really want to thank you for giving us all these wonderful calls. Every Thursday we do it, and you all never cease to amaze us with the calls, the stories, the perspectives, and questions. This is Nashville. We really love you all. Nashville, Middle Tennessee, thank you so much. And thanks to you all for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Katherine Ceicys. It was directed by Tasha A.F. Lemley. Our board operators, Liv Lombardi. Josh Deepens was on the phones. And the masterminds behind our theme music are Laurent and Namir Blade. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. And the conversation doesn't end here. Comment and tell us what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message, 615-751-2500. Find us on the socials, Blue Sky, Instagram, and X at This Is Nashville. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil A. Colonna. We'll see you on Monday, everybody. And to be good to each other.